steal from me while a guest in my home, enjoy the fallout. This happened many years ago. I was young, married, and pregnant, the perfect trifecta for social ostracization. Most people felt I'd married up, as my husband came from money and had a good job, which meant that unlike most young married people, I had a beautiful home and nice things. Just about everyone my age was either in college or still in high school. Most of the people I knew who were married and pregnant were much older than me. I was having a hard time. Naively, I initially tried to make and maintain friendships with people my age or a little younger. This was a problem for so many reasons, not the least of which being that when you're young, lonely, and have nice things that most other young people don't have, you can draw the wrong kinds of friends. I developed a friendship with a girl who was finishing up her senior year in high school. We'd gone to the same school, and she was a freshman when I was a junior. We had some friends in common. She started coming over to my house and hanging out. One evening, she asked if she could bring a friend over to the house with her for dinner. I said sure. At one point that evening, my friend's guest asked to use the restroom. My husband and I explained where it was, but didn't escort her, trusting that she'd find it herself. She walked around the corner, ostensibly in the direction of said bathroom, and came back shortly after. The night ended with no clue on my husband's or my part that things were about to get crazy. About a week later, I couldn't find a pair of earrings I wore on my wedding day. My husband bought me a pearl and diamond necklace and earring set as a wedding gift. We tore the house apart looking for them to no avail. My husband said I must have set them down somewhere and forgotten, but we'd eventually find them. I was anxious about it, but I knew the last place I'd had them was at home. We also hadn't done any major deep cleaning or vacuuming, so I knew they had to be around somewhere. A few weeks went by, and I suddenly noticed one of our checking accounts that we set up as a business account for my husband when he was contemplating starting a side hustle was massively in the negative to the tune of almost $1,000. Most of it was overdraft fees, because we didn't keep much of a balance in that account. I immediately called my husband and told him that we had a large negative balance in that specific account. Neither of us had been using the debit card for that account mistakenly, so we began reviewing the charges. All the charges were for stores at the same local mall, and were for places where teenage girls would typically shop. There were dozens of small to medium purchases, each followed by a $25 overdraft fee once they spent the initial balance we kept in the account to avoid penalties. This all added up to about $1,000 in total theft. We hadn't had many people over, and we specifically kept that debit card in our master bedroom, so it was pretty easy to figure out what happened and just who was responsible. It also wasn't that much of a hop, skip, and a jump to also figure out where my earrings went. Pissed doesn't begin to describe my mental state. I'd been incredibly generous with this friend. I had welcomed her into my home. I had cooked for her and her friend. I called every store in the mall and began asking if they had security cameras. Most did not, but one store had just recently installed security cameras due to issues with shoplifting. They let me know that while they had recorded footage from the day in question, they couldn't hand it over to me, but would be happy to provide it to the police if I filed a report. I then contacted my bank. I asked them what the procedure was for declaring charges fraudulent and reversing them. They indicated that an investigation would need to take place and that I had a limited amount of time to make that decision before I permanently assumed responsibility for those charges. They also made it clear that the overdraft fees would not be reversed unless I declared the charges were fraudulent. I did more digging. $2,000 in theft was the cutoff for felony charges. My earrings were worth approximately $800. We had about $1,000 worth of charges plus overdraft fees in the checking account. So, I contacted my friend and let her know the horrible news that someone we'd had over at the house had stolen from me. I explained to her that my pearl earrings from my wedding had gone missing and that someone had stolen a debit card we kept upstairs in my master bedroom before running up charges at the mall. She seemed very sympathetic and said that was just terrible. I then told her a very nice little white lie, that we were going to pursue felony charges, since between the earrings, the charges at all these stores, and the many overdraft fees, more than $2,000 worth of theft had occurred. She was quick to chime in with the information that she was pretty sure there would be no way to prove who'd used my debit card, as the stores at the mall I'd mentioned didn't have security cameras. Bingo. Thanks for doubly confirming what I already knew. That's when I helpfully supplied the information that one of the stores had just recently installed security cameras and that they were preparing to hand it over to the police once I filed a report. She got extremely quiet after that and said she had to go. Not so surprisingly, she called me back shortly after and asked if she could come over. She showed up within 30 minutes not only with my pearl earrings and debit card, but also a small diamond ring I inherited from my great-aunt that I'd had no clue was missing. I never wore it and primarily held on to it for sentimental reasons. She had a very well-rehearsed little explanation. She hadn't stolen anything from me. Her friend snuck up my stairs, into my bedroom, and stole some of my jewelry and my debit card under the pretense of using my bathroom. When I pointed out that clearly she knew about the theft and yet said and did nothing, she began crying, arguing that she was in a difficult spot and didn't want to betray her friend. Clearly, I didn't qualify as a friend. She confessed that there were multiple others involved in the shopping spree at the mall, including her. She seemed to be quite content to participate in racking up charges on my checking account along with her friend, despite claiming she hadn't stolen from me. I was honestly devastated by the near loss of sentimental pieces of jewelry, which I felt incredibly fortunate to have back. This made it easy for me to shut down her attempts at emotional manipulation. I made it clear in no uncertain terms that as far as I was concerned, whatever happened next was up to them, and that I had no problem seeing them all charged with felony robbery. 2 of the 4 involved were 17, but the others were 18, so felony charges could have been a pretty big deal. I demanded all the names and the parents' contact info, and made it clear that if I didn't get it, I was going to the police. I called the parents and informed them of what their little angels had done. I also informed the parents that I would provide their children with the opportunity to repay the full balance of what they charged on my checking account, plus overdraft fees. I made it clear that this was a time-sensitive offer that expired with about a week of buffer time in terms of the deadline to file fraud with my bank in case they failed to follow through. Needless to say, the parents were horrified by the behavior and extremely grateful for my offer. It was quite satisfying to know that the 4 of them had to get jobs and work long hours over the next few weeks in order to pay me back. At one point, my former friend tried to question me about the amount they owed, claiming it seemed like way more than what they spent and not fair. I took great pleasure in explaining how they racked up overdraft fees that the bank refused to reverse unless I filed fraud claims. Their little shopping spree had cost them about 3-4x what it would have if they'd just used their own money. My former friend also tried to ask for more time and insisted it was too hard to pay me back in such a short period of time. I took great pleasure in asking her point-blank why I should trust them or take any risk on, given their recent actions. That shut her up pretty quickly. Ultimately, I received all my jewelry back and was repaid for all the charges plus overdraft fees. I never spoke to any of them again.